In the view, you see some 18-inch dolls by Batat and Gotts, and you also see a small Batat baby doll. Now, I had uploaded a video about knitting a super bulky, it's bulky, super bulky, but it can knit either way depending on the size needles you use. But it was a doll blanket, and it was about 12 inches square, and on a doll it goes up to about here. And so if you have someone who has 18-inch dolls, and say it's a child and the child needs to take a nap, well, the doll can lie down and have a blanket. Now, I'm doing the same thing with crochet and bulky weight yarn, and as you can see, even the boy dolls can wear these as a shawl, and that looks like an oversized apron, but it's actually a pocket, or as a shawl for a girl doll with a bow. On the boy doll, I just made a half-hitch knot to hold it together. Now this may be kind of left over from my Girl Scout days, in a sense, where you can use one item for more than one thing. So you make a 12-inch granny square, you fold it in a triangle, and it becomes a shawl. If you fold it in half this way and put a cord through it, it becomes an apron, but it's also a pocket. And then again, there's the other shawl. So now, these Batat baby dolls can be hard to find, and their little carriers can be even harder to find. Now here's the knitted version. And inside this is one of the Batat baby dolls. So if you're having a hard time finding the carrier, you could actually make just a knitted or crocheted bulky square. Let's move this stuff out of the way here. Now on this one, where she has a carrier on, let's say you have more than one small item that your doll takes. You can tie this around her waist and she has a fanny pack. Now the cord I made with a size G crochet hook and a single strand of worsted weight yarn. And I just kept chaining until I had a cord about 18 to 24 inches long. So each of the dolls, in this case, has a 12-inch crocheted square folded in different ways, and that chained crochet cord either holding it as an apron or a shawl, and then of course if you take it off of them, it's their blanket. So that's 3 ways to use one item. And I've been using a Q size hook. I think it's the largest crochet hook you can get. It is a Q hook. And when in the doll blanket video, this yarn is actually made with a lucid into the bulky, super bulky, and then I knit this on size 17 needles. So you can check that video for the directions, but it's basically casting on 17 stitches on size 17 needles and then knitting. It takes about 4 ounces of yarn. I haven't weighed about how much. You should probably figure 4 to 6 ounces total if you're using 2 colors and holding them double strand like that instead of luciding them. You should probably figure 4 to 6 ounces, because crochet takes 1.5 times the amount of yarn that knitting takes. So as an apron, it looks a little bulky and oversized. But let's say you're going, you know, for children, you are going on a trip. And let's say her doll has a couple of things, or his doll has a couple of things they take with them everywhere. They will fit right in here. If you wanted to make extra cord, you could make it 3 feet long and go around 3 sides, and it's more like a backpack because the sides wouldn't be open. If you use it as a fanny pack, like this one, and all I did to put the cord through was just use my fingers and go through both sides of the top. Just go back and forth from one side to the other, and it makes it a drawstring that keeps the whole thing closed. But the Batat dolls are pretty big, and so that's how much stuff you can keep in them. That's about they're about 4 inches across, or a little bit longer, a little bit wider. Or if, say your doll has a knitting Nancy and some yarn will easily fit in here. Either the knitted or the crochet. Now, if you don't know how to make a granny square, I can put the tripod on the camera and show you. It's very easy to make a granny square, and granny squares are wonderful because you can start one and keep going and make an afghan, or you can make them all different colors on different rounds. You can be very creative with granny squares. You can make them all 5 inches, make them all 4 inches. You can do a lot with them. So with a Q hook, looping bulky weight yarn over it, and I'm holding just 2 strands of worsted together. Pull your working yarn over the top like that and make a chain. Now, to make a cord, you would just keep chaining on a smaller size hook with just 1 strand of yarn. But to make a granny square, generally directions say make 5 chains. 5 chain stitches. I sometimes make 6. And the reason I make 6, and I have to make sure I'm not using 2 things of yarn here, which I am. I make 6 because it gives you a little extra room in the center. It also leaves a slightly larger hole in the center. So there are 6 chains, and then you take your hook and you put it in your beginning chain stitch, and you have made a loop. Then you do another chain stitch, and you have a loop like that. Now, you can do it 2 ways. You can either do a double crochet right now, or generally you would chain 3 stitches and count that as a double crochet. You would then do 2 more double crochet. All of this goes into that loop, that circle that you formed. And to make a double crochet, you bring your yarn over, bring it through the loop down here, then bring your yarn over again, pull 2 sets of strands over, and do that. There you have 3 chain stitches and 1 double crochet. Now you do 1 more double crochet, and you have 3 chain stitches and 2 double crochet in the center loop. Then you do a single chain stitch, and now you make another set of 3 right next to it. So now you have your first block of 3 and your second, well, I have to do one more. You would have your second block of 3. You actually do 4 of those in the center loop. Yeah, I'm going to leave that like that because that tells you how to do it. So you need 4 sets of 3 in the center loop, and your first one is really 2 double crochet and 3 chain stitches. So once you have done that, and we'll move over to this one, I'm using both ends of a skein of yarn, and I can't go very far with that one. When you get the 4th group of 3 done, you connect it with a slip stitch to the first 3 chain stitches. And it will look like that. So here's my initial chain stitches, 2 double crochet, 3 double crochet, 3 double crochet, and I missed one here. This should be 3 double crochet. I dropped one for some reason. And then it's joined into your initial chain stitch with a slip stitch. Then what I like to do is you can either go forward to the first space between the group of 3, or you can go backward. And I like to go backward just because that's in a chain stitch, and I consider that the beginning where I joined to the chain stitch. Now in this one, you do 3 double crochet into that loop you made, into the space you made when you joined to the original 3 chain stitches. So there are 3 double crochet in that space, but this has to become a corner. So you do a single crochet, a single chain, and then you do 3 more. And you have made your first corner. Now, some people do a single chain stitch before they go to the next space to make a corner, and some people don't. It depends on how loose you want it. I'm not going to, and I'm going to do the 3 double crochet, a chain stitch, and then 3 double crochet. And you do that in each of the 4 spaces that were originally between your groups of 3. So you will be making 4 corners, and then once you get to that point, you will have, let me just get there, in between the corners, you will start to get spaces. And in each of those spaces, you just do 3 double crochet. So your square just keeps getting larger and larger. And for this idea with the dolls, I stopped at 12 inches. So there are 2 corners. Here's 1 space and there's 1 space. And so then when you get around here, you would again join to the top of this one with a slip stitch. And then you'll have a square. And then, so then the first one to go in would be a corner space. But you can see over here, you now have a side space. So you would do a corner here with 3 chain and then 3, and then here you would just do 3 double crochet. So that's how to start and do a granny square. And like I said, I stopped at 12 inches. And when you go to to end it, you just do a slip stitch into the space that you're ending it at, cut the yarn and pull that little tail of yarn through the last stitch, and then work the tail into the work. And you'll end up with a 12-inch square, granny square. I'll take this shawl off and show you what they look like. So there it is, folded in half as a triangle, as a shawl. And that's a 12-inch granny square. So it looks a little bulky as an apron, but the apron is really a pocket and a way to carry things. I wouldn't put an iPhone in there because it might slide out and get lost if you have an older child. Or what I was actually thinking of doing, I'm in the middle of moving, and I want to take some Knitting Nancy's with me, some other things, and I was thinking if I put one of these on each doll, I can stick stuff in each doll. They can even stand on the floor because they have doll stands. They could be my storage. Small items like knitting needles or Knitting Nancy's or even Madeline dolls that I might be knitting for could get stuck in here. So each 18-inch doll can hold a bunch of stuff with one of these. So that's like my version of what I would do with it. But for a child, it's a way, if you're going for a car ride, especially if you make a longer cord, you know, it teaches the child that, gee, look at this. You can have a blanket, a shawl, or a pocket. You can take your stuff in it. You can't lose your stuff. So you could teach a child to crochet with a G-hook. And have them make their own cord. So it's an opening into learning how to crochet or knit if you want to knit them. You could use a lucite and make your yarn that way, or in my case I've been taking the 2 colors and just winding them into a... This is the Laces yarn ball winder. And I've been just holding 2 colors like that and winding them into a ball. And then I have the 2 colors to crochet with. That is a bulky weight. If you lucite them, it's more of a super bulky weight, and you would get a tighter crochet. It wouldn't be quite this loose. So there's an idea to use 18-inch dolls either as a learning tool for kids, or a convenient pocket for kids, or for an adult to store items. if I move to a studio apartment and I take them with me, they may have to carry stuff or hold stuff in order to have a reason for me to have them in the apartment. It may be a very small apartment, and I have 14 of them, so they may have to work for their space. So that's my idea on it. But it is also a versatile thing you can do. And like I said, as an apron, it looks a little bulky. I have another normal looking apron pattern for an 18-inch shawl that I'll be typing up soon. This is more a way to show children that if you have excuse me, one piece of fabric, you can use it in different ways. Now, the video cut off a couple of times there. My camera is a little temperamental, and you missed the double crochet directions. Here are 2 rounds complete on a granny square. The first round are the initial blocks of 3 that went into the first loop. The second round are the corners and the spaces they made in between them. So I am now at the end of round 2 and joining into the top of what is really the first corner. And a slip stitch, you just stick your hook through where you're joining, go over the hook with your working yarn, and then pull that through. That's a slip stitch. So now you have completed round 2, and you have 4 corners and a space in between each one. Now at this point I don't go backwards. You see how there's a space here that I could go into? I go forward, and I go right into a double crochet. And to make a double crochet, bring a working yarn over. In this case, I go right into the corner space like that. Bring the working yarn over and pull it through. Bring the working yarn over, slide 2 strands over your working yarn. It leaves you with 2 strands. And when you do that the second time, you have completed 1 double crochet. So now I will continue to make 2 more, a chain stitch, and then 3 more, and I have made a corner. I then will be here at the center space, and I put 3 double crochet in there. Then when I get to the next corner, it's 3, chain 3. But I just wanted to be clear about the double crochet directions because they got cut off there. And granny squares really are wonderful. Crocheting is easy, fast. The only downside, if there is one, is that it takes more yarn basically than a knitted item. Very easy to do, very fun, and with a Q hook, very easy to teach to children. You know, I have hooks that go all the way down to like, they look like tiny, they're as narrow as a paper clip or a safety pin, and they're for thread crochet. And those are called steel crochet hooks, and they're for very delicate thread crochet. But when you first start out, the larger hooks are very much easier.